Welcome to Merchman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Ben talks about an environmentally friendly blue light technology used to hinder the germination rate of weeds. Avery explains research he has done with help from weed scientists in Australia when it comes to harvesting your crops and preventing spreading weed seeds by chaff lining. Hear about what Ben and Avery have to say about wheat fields they've inspected this past week and the wheat varieties we're offering this year.
Hi, this is Joe Merchman. Welcome to Merchman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Turk and Ben and a special guest, one of our area sales managers, Avery Bennett. Avery, we're going to let you introduce yourself a little bit here and tell us a little bit about your background and what you do here at Merchman Seeds.
Awesome. Well, thank you for letting me on the show today and, being a part of the team here at Merchman Seeds. But I joined Merchman Seeds here this December. But before that, I grew up in southeast Iowa, but not on your typical farm, on a research farm, which gained my knowledge of understanding what the value of production and development of new products and genetics and all that. But after graduating high school, I went to Western Illinois, got my degrees there, but then continued my education at Iowa State University, and I earned my master's in crop production physiology with a weed science focus. Joined a great team there, Dr. Prashant Jha and Ram and Alexis and Austin, great group of people up there at Iowa State. And our focus at Iowa State University was we wanted to integrate a new type of weed management approach that has taken root over in Australia. That research has been called harvest weed seed control. And we can jump into that now, or we can kind of get the show going a little bit and jump into it later.
I think we'll start right with that, and Ben's going to lead us in that direction.
Yeah, so there's been two different videos that have came out, and an article that came out from Farm Journal and Ag Web. We'll link to that video there, but they were talking about how blue light and heat actually affects is another way, along with the harvest weed seed destructors, could be a potential way that we can control the soybean weed bank and corn weed bank that we fight year in and year out. And this technology is what they're using is they found that with enough intensity of blue light and a certain amount of heat that blue light puts off, they have the ability to hinder the germination rates of the water hemp seeds that are coming out. And the technology was actually adapted by the U.S. military for trying to control tumbleweed seeds out in the desert. So
they'll put a device in the combine and basically run that weed seed through this blue light, and then when the seed gets put out on the field, it's going to have 0% germination.
Correct. Yep. So there's different levels of light intensity from what the video talks about. Like even a small amount of blue light for a short period of time can actually enhance germination. So when that blue light is put on the seed long enough, it will deteriorate germination. And there's a couple different, on the video it's showed it a couple different ways where the blue light is actually on the inside of one of the final chaffing augers. Mm-hmm. And that light stays on the inside, so it's controlled, so you're not like getting too hot and getting a whole bunch of the other chaff too hot to like cause fires and stuff like that. But I think it's something to look into and keep an eye on out, because they were talking also in the video how you can under 10 seconds of intense blue light therapy, or whatever they want to call it, they can actually kill ryegrass. So the longer period of time, they may actually have the ability to use this product and burn down or vegetable crops where we can actually kill alive plants, as well as try to deteriorate the germination rates of pigweed species that we fight every year.
Environmentally very friendly, and no EPA, USDA, FDA approval necessary. So I've always heard that 85% of the weeds that you see come from the previous year's weed bank or weed crop. So over time, if you can reduce that weed bank, you'll just have less weeds to control. And then of course John Deere's got the sprayer now that can eyeball a weed and just put the spray on that spot. And so there's just a lot of technology coming on in weed control. Avery, do you have anything more you'd like to add on that area?
With all the new technology coming out, why is the industry maybe pushing towards this? The important is, as weed scientists, we've seen weeds develop resistance to up to 7 to 11 different modes of action. One of my other lab mates, Ryan Hamburg, he's working on the evolution of herbicide-resistant water hemp populations in the state of Iowa, and has seen an increase of herbicide-resistant tremendously since 2013. But farmers have had that mindset in the 1960s to the 1980s. Farmers could rely on the industry, the chemical industry, to come up with a new mode of action every 2 to 3 years. And that allowed farmers, I don't want to say lazy, but rely on the industry to come up with a new mode of action. Well, since the 80s, we haven't seen an introduction of new mode of action. And so now the industry, as well as the university, is pushing towards this type of technology, like the blue light and the harvest weed seed control technology that is out there.
Talk a little bit about your project.
My project?
Yep.
Yeah, so I joined Iowa State in 2019, and luckily Prashant Jha allowed me to have free range on what I wanted to do. And growing up where I grew up, I wanted to do something different, a little odd, what was to set myself apart within the weed science industry. And so I looked at Dr. Michael Wallish over in Australia, and he's pretty much what we call the king of harvest weed seed control. He's got his hands on everything and has developed it to what it is today.
And Australia has even amped up more weed resistance than we do in the United States. So it's like they've been fighting it longer than we have.
Yeah. Australia is definitely ahead of the game. They're small grain operations. They don't have the herbicide programs like we do here in the Midwest in our corn and soybeans rotations. And so they've kind of been forced to integrate these harvest weed seed control. And the farmers are the ones actually helping come up with the technology, and they're taking a first approach. So when I joined Iowa State, I saw this technology out there, and I was like, wow, I really want to try to integrate that into our soybean production here in the Midwest. So I reached out to Michael Wallish. He came and spoke at Iowa State, sat down with me for a couple days, and we kind of developed my research, and then got me in contact with some great people. Tristan Friend over there in Australia, he owns West Oz Boiler Making Service, which develops what my product was the chaff liner kits. He's developed commercial chaff liner kits for Case, New Holland, John Deere, all your different combines out there. So I knew I didn't really want to build my own, because that's just too much of a stress when you're asking a farmer to allow you to use their combines. I want to make sure the equipment is fit to the T, fit just right. So I got in contact with the Australians over there, and they helped me develop my research. And so what my focus is what I was looking at is at different harvest dates, utilizing these chaff lining technology or another technology called seed destructor, how can we control water hemp seeds? The chaff lining approach is you're taking the chaff material that enters the combine, goes through your rotor and concaves. The weed seeds fall with your chaff as well as your grain down into the sieves, where then passes through the sieves. Well, with that fan acts like a cleaner, which then blows that small weed seeds and the chaff material along the sieves where it reaches the backside of the combine. In a normal harvest system, the weed seeds go through the chopper, which is the quickest way to spread, that one water hemp plant that can produce 200, 500,000 seeds in an ideal growing season. You spread all those seeds out over that 40, 50 foot span. So that one plant that was isolated here now has spread all that seed across that whole area. And so it's chaff lining. Our focus is to capture that seed before it gets into the chopper and concentrate it into a narrow band centered directly behind the harvester, called the chaff line. The chaff line then utilizes the mulch effect because you have that soybean pods, the soybean chaff, and it suppresses total emergence. I've done a great, not to brag, but I've done a really good greenhouse study at looking at different yielding amounts of soybeans and how can soybean chaff reduce water hemp emergence over time. And we're seeing that at an average 40, 60 bushel soybean yielding amount can reduce water hemp emergence by 80% or more. So it had a very good promise, and then we took it into the actual field environment, and we looked at chaff lining with different herbicide programs. We are looking at utilizing, your normal pre-only program, which we don't recommend just utilizing only pre, but we had to have a low dose rate to see the response. And then we looked at pre, followed by a post broadcast over your whole field area. And then we looked at a pre, followed by a banded directly on the chaff line, which we saw a really good response. If, high input costs, a farmer could save their money on their herbicide programs by just targeting that high concentration of water hemp in that chaff line area. Then we also looked at a pre, followed by a broadcast post, followed by a late post just on that chaff line if you have really high weed pressures. So
basically you're taking all the weed seed and you're putting it in a narrow band.
Yep.
As it goes across the field, and then attacking that narrow band.
Yeah, I mean, instead of, just think of the mindset, if, back in the day, I don't know how many times you guys had to go kill volunteer corn, go out there and hoeing it out. Well, think of a 100-acre field. You got to cover that 100 acres. Well, with the weed seeds, if we're reducing it down to that 16-inch band, and you just have to target those weed seeds in that area, well, you reduce your whole field area by a tremendous amount. And we were seeing with that chaff lining technology that we were capturing greater than 95% of the seeds that entered the combine, and we were putting it into the chaff line. And so the technology itself was doing a very great job at concentrating that weed seeds inside the combine in that narrow row. But the number one focus is you got to harvest when you're harvesting your crops, you're also harvesting your weeds. So you got to have the mindset is that when you harvest your crops, you want to harvest at a time that those water hemp plants are retaining a high portion of seeds. And that was another project I worked on. I looked at the evaluation of water hemp seed retention over different harvest dates.
Yeah, so if the water hemp plant shattered out per se, the system wouldn't work very well.
Exactly. And another, what I call the cool approach is the seed destructor. And we're seeing the technology itself is doing as equal job as the chaff lining and capturing the seeds and pretty much pulverizing them to a level that makes them unviable in the next growing season. The difference in Australia, both of those approaches are very popular within the farming industry. Right away, the farmers took hold of the chaff liner kit because of the value. It's about 1/10 of the cost as a seed destructor. And the seed destructors, just since they're so new and there's so many moving parts, there's been a lot of trial and error that has been taking place with those. But now I think they got them fine-tuned. Iowa State's working with Ready Crop up there in Canada. They produce a really great product, and we're seeing great success. And we have 2 of those machines now running in the state of Iowa.
We heard about this a long time ago that they were working on it, and now it's coming into reality. Now, the issue that as you look over the next hill is that once we get into destroying these seeds, particularly with a seed destructor, like a hammer mill type device, is will we cause the water hemp plant to evolve to shatter out its seed prior to harvest?
I don't like to say it, but water hemp is an amazing weed. It's an amazing plant, one. I mean, its ability to gain resistance at such a rapid level and its ability to, grow through so many different growing conditions, I give it, it's an amazing weed, even though it's a headache for farmers and stuff like that. But research, I think in University of Nebraska, they were looking at how does, if we're using mowing approaches, over in Australia, there's now selecting, if you utilize the technology, you're going to have that one plant that gets away or doesn't get killed by it or doesn't go into the combine, and they're producing seeds at a relatively low level. And we're seeing water hemp plants in that mowing trial, they started producing leaves at a prosperate right level. And so their growing point is now below the harvester head or below the mower deck. And so it's always going to be a challenge, and that's why I believe farmers, there's always a multi-tactic approach. You got to think of a triangle. I really enjoy our herbicides. They're going to stay valuable here to us. I just want farmers to think of a combination of, utilizing herbicides with a row spacing, with cover crops, with harvest weed seed control, also, just best management practices and stuff like that. I mean, it's a systematic approach to control weeds.
It's very interesting, Avery.
Thank
very
you.
Interesting.
And then came along endless soybeans.
Exactly.
And kind of now you don't have anything to look at out there in the field. There are no weeds.
For today.
For today. But it's always going to come, and, we always got to push ourselves to that next level.
Yep.
And I think, that's why Merschman Seeds was so intriguing to me as a company when I was starting job searching. Because you guys have taken pride in quality and, that connection with the growers, and, it's a family-owned business. So, Joe, you guys have grown it to, great depths. So thank you very much for that.
You always got to put the needs of the farmer first, and that's what we try to do here. So we'll keep working on that. Ben, do you have some other information you want to talk about today?
Yeah, Avery and I have spent some time. He's not just a weed scientist now. He's a full-blown field agronomist. And we spent some time looking at wheat this past week, and we really seen some differences in what November 15th, 16th planted wheat looks like in comparison to the 1st of October. So we've been fielding some questions because of the amount of rain that we've seen here locally, and even further to the south, a lot of the nitrogen has been delayed for application. A lot of the herbicides have been delayed for application, and guys are, as they've found some very short windows, wanted us to look at some wheat stands. And it's just amazing the difference in what planting date on wheat, how important planting date is. So we were in a field that was planted November 15th, 16th last year. We're still at Feeks 3, so the plant is in that tillering stage yet. It hasn't started its jointing process. So in those fields, they're still capturing quite a bit of the value of where nitrogen is going to help the tillering process. We've also been in some fields that were a little bit further along, and the guys were asking, how late can I get away with spraying nitrogen and herbicides on these crops? And that really comes into the Feeks, that Feeks 6 and 7 stage, basically, where when you split the stem of that wheat plant at the top of the first node, you're going to see the itty bitty little head. So all the spikelets have been set by that Feeks 6 stage, and you're going to see that itty bitty little head there. And once that head is above the second node, you're no longer supposed to be using herbicides. You're no longer supposed to be running your Palisade for growth regulator control on standability. And really, after the Feeks 6 stage, where the head is right above the first node, you're going to start to see damage with frosts, and you're going to start to see damage with wheel track running those rows down. So there's a huge variation in where wheat is staging at currently. And we can actually throw some pictures up of guys that got their wheat sprayed with nitrogen in a timely manner. They jumped on it in the end of March, middle of April, compared to the guys that have got it on in the past couple weeks. You can really see what a thin stand looks like compared to something that is tied into the nitrogen and taking advantage of the couple of days that we've had in the 70 and 80 degree temperatures. So
wheat's a lot like corn. You've got to plant it a week before the fly-free date or a week after the fly-free date. And the reason why you can plant it a week before is because, well, with Merschman wheat, we put a high enough level of what we call the southern rate for insecticides to control those aphids and mites and Hessian fly that can give it trouble. But wheat yields are determined in the fall. Yep. In other words, you got to have that P and K there, and then you pop it with that nitrogen in the spring, like you've discussed. And of course, what happens if you do plant late? Well, you plant more seeds to get more potential plants out there, and then hit it hard with nitrogen in the spring to get it to tiller. So in many ways, wheat's kind of like corn for planting date, and then if you do have late planting, it's kind of like soybeans. You increase your population because you're not going to have as much tillering. So, but this year wheat may not be the redheaded stepchild like it's always been for almost my entire career. But I always tell people I love wheat because there's no tech fee and there's no license required, a lot less paperwork. And then with the double crop opportunity with these ultra earlies, all of a sudden this marginal ground is going to gross as many dollars as your best corn ground, and I think we're going to see a lot more wheat acres this fall.
Yep. And we've had some, I don't know if we've talked about this on Cup of Joe yet, but we have some newer options that we're looking at for this coming July order season for what our wheat looks like. We've got one product that's a little bit later. We got 2 medium earlies that we're offering this year, and essentially 2 different ultra early products. So we're a little bit more diversified than what we've been in the past, but we're looking at multiple different genetic platforms to diversify, and we're also looking at some of the highest yielding ultra early lines that are available, because you don't necessarily get with one genetic program you don't necessarily get the best of both worlds, and that's why we kind of look at multiple different genetic platforms to get super high yielding ultra early lines and really high yielding medium early lines that are still double crop.
And we're getting that double crop market, people interested in moving that double crop market north.
Yeah. $11 wheat does a lot.
That does a lot.
A lot of guys look at that and want to try new things.
And $15 beans.
That's right.
And we're going to enhance our seed treatment a little bit this year too, a little bit better.
Yeah, I think you're going to, behind the scenes, we really want to talk about it on Cup of Joe, but we got a lot going on behind the scenes that guys are going to be really happy once we start talking about 2023 and 2024.
That's good. We'll always move forward. Anything else? Turk, you got anything you would like to add?
It's pretty much the same thing this last week, Joe. The market's kind of been roaming around a little bit. Beans got stronger, corn got a little weaker. The oil market's what's driving the wheat market or the soybean market higher. Again, as oil goes, so does soy oil, and it's dragging the market up. There hasn't been a lot of planting progress. There's talk about delayed planting and kind of holding the markets at bay. They're not going to go down because we didn't really have hardly any progress this last year. It doesn't sound like this last week, and doesn't sound like we're going to have that much the first part of this next week. By the end of the week, we're going to start seeing a little bit of warmer temperatures, but we continue to stay wet. It's going to be that first week of May before, as of right now's forecast, that first week of May before things start drying out and turning around and looking out. There was a really good article by Emily Unglesby about cold weather planning and the delays and everything, and I encourage everybody to go look at that because it talks about the pros and cons a little bit, and the most important thing is making sure that you get good planting conditions. The last statement in there was it's too early to get stupid with these prices and these markets right now. Get the stuff put in right, and don't mud it in yet.
It's hard, Turk. It's hard.
I know.
I know farmers got so much riding on this year, and the pressure level is just unbelievable. And as we talk to them, they just feel defeated almost because they're not out there in the field right now.
But we've all seen the results of planting in too wet of conditions when we dig up root systems all summer long. It will cost you all summer long if you plant mudded in, so to speak.
I agree with you. The old saying, why is it that we have time to do it twice but not right the first time? So, like you said, don't get stupid yet. There's plenty of time to get stupid if it gets into June.
Yes, but don't put all your eggs in one basket.
That's right.
And maybe hit on, like, Joe, you mentioned this earlier this week, is, don't get stupid, but maybe harvesting wheat, with these prices, you might want to harvest them at a higher moisture content and pay that bill of drying them down so that you can get those soybeans in at a relatively good stage before it gets super wet in July 4th or around there if you can get them in before July.
Yep,
Maybe
I
want to
agree.
hit on that.
I agree. That's always good advice. Have a bin that you can put air on, and you just need a regular air, and fill it about half full and push that air through. 16-17% wheat automatically protects your test weight. You automatically get your crop in quicker, and yeah, that's good advice. I mean, that's the way to speed things up. And it seems like, at least in our local area, if you're planting in June, you have potential to raise some 40-50 bushel double crop beans, with some rain in August. So
what did Nolan do, Ben?
On Nolan's, yeah, we can go back. We can link to that video here. But Nolan Wilkens, an area sales manager of ours over in Western Illinois, he is in a continuous wheat bean rotation where he always has 2 crops growing in that year, and his wheat made in the 70s and his soybeans made in the upper 40s or lower 50s, which is absolutely incredible for our area here. So.
And it was on a piece of ground that couldn't raise really good corn. I mean, so it's a win-win for him for sure. It's a great video. I know you sat down with him, and we can put that on this episode so you can watch it. So if you really want to do continuous wheat soybean rotation the same year, Nolan's got some good advice.
Yep.
Well, you guys have been waiting for this. Ben, this is the corny joke. Now, Ben is a firefighter, right, Ben?
Volunteer, yep.
Volunteer firefighter. And then he also, grew up on a farm and still helps on the family farm. So this one here, Ben, is totally connected to you, okay?
Great.
All right.
Great.
Ben hates this when I always say I got one for Ben, because anyhow.
Usually it's about horses.
It's usually about horses, right? All right, here we go. There once was a man who really adored tractors. He collected them, drove them everywhere, loved anything to do with them. One day at a tractor show, he got hit by a tractor and was severely injured. After months in the hospital, intensive physical therapy, he finally got his life back on track. Only now he hated tractors. He didn't want anything to do with them anymore. One day, the man was walking past a burning house, and people were trapped inside. There was so much smoke that the firefighters couldn't get in. So the man ran up to the house, and with a single huge breath, sucked out all the smoke long enough for the firefighters to enter and save the people. Afterward, the firefighters said to the man, "That was amazing. How did you do that?" The man replied, "I'm an ex-tractor fan." Ex-tractor fan. Okay.
Hell of a build-up.
Yeah.
Didn't know it was going there, I bet you.
No, I didn't see that one coming.
And we also would like to remind that this Friday it was Earth Day, and farmers, I just have tremendous respect for farmers and Earth Day, because every farmer I know is very, very tied to the land, and they are so careful to be good stewards of it. And their goal, I know every farmer I've ever talked to, is to leave the land in better shape than when they got it. So a salute to farmers and Earth Day, and we'll see you next week. We hope you and your family are safe and healthy, and take care.